eventually I had a pile of these stories, these chubby and me stories. And about 6 months ago, Audible Canada put out a call for Indigenous writers to join this thing called the Indigenous Writer Circle. And so I submitted one of my stories, and I was chosen. And so what they're doing is they're mentoring us to publication. So I'm working with a mentor, and I'm about 65,000 words, and we're trying to get it up to 80,000 words. So we can present it to a publisher from there. I'll tell you really quickly what the Sally Manning Award was. Up here magazine, out of Young Life, they have this competition every year called the Sally Manning Award for creative nonfiction, Indigenous creative nonfiction. So I wrote about my cousin Timothy, who was a street person, and I wrote about my cousin Timothy, who was a street person, and I won the award. He eventually passed away from his lifestyle, and so I won that. I was doing this and that, and so you know what I'm going to do? I know I'm running out of time. I'm going to read you, since this is about finding your voice. Oh yeah, I better get back to that. So this panel I'm supposed to be conducting is about finding your own voice. So all through my time listening to my dad tell his stories, I started to develop my own voice, and they started coming out in these stories, in these chubby and me stories. And I started writing in my own vernacular, and I started writing like how people talk back home. People talk back home, and instead of saying, "What are you doing?" they say, "What you're doing, where you're going, who knew?" All of this. Yeah, all of this slang. And I started writing in that vernacular, and it really caught on. It really caught on. People, my readers really caught on to it. But not only that, but I started writing about the characters that I grew up with. I grew up with some really interesting characters, and I'm sure you did too, coming from a small community. You have really, or on where we were, these guys were tragedy about them, but they had this beauty too, about them. They were funny, and they laughed at themselves, and they had this humility. I call it bush humility. And so this editor wanted to hire a reporter in Oak Grove to send in weekly reports from Oak Grove, what's happening in the community. And it was only about 2 or 300 people. So Edith Josie, this elder, which an elder, English was her second language, and she could barely scratch out her name. But she would write down her report on a piece of paper, and she would send it to the editor, and it was called "Here Are the News." And the editors were so enamored by Edith's reports of Old Grove, because she would say, "Oh, Big Joe, come into town today. You got 5 caribou. You're gonna eat good." She had a really innocence about her, and so that was Edith Josie. And I remember reading her columns when we were kids. My mom used to bring copies of her newspaper home, and she was from Oak Grove, and she'd been to our house a couple of times. So all of this, I'm just trying to boil into this theme of finding your voice. So now that I'm at this stage in my career as a writer, I'm working actually, I'll tell you what I'm doing. So introduction right now, if you can just continue reading there. The first one on the left. So this is Agnes White, and she's from Tuktoyaktuk, and she's 86 years old, and she has one of those memories you talk about. She has a photographic memory. She has a perfect memory, and that stems from growing up on the land. And because we're an oral culture, you find a lot of Inuit elders have that really sharp memory, and Agnes has that really sharp memory. She knows times and dates and places and smells and sounds, and when she's telling a story, she brings you right back to that time, and she reminds me of sitting with my dad and listening to stories, and I just get lost in her voice. So I applied to Canada Council. all you emerging writers, Canada Council, man, they're going to be your best friend. If it wasn't for Canada Council, I'd be starving years ago. Anyways, they gave me a grant to write this book with Agnes, and Bambi knows her. Aren't you related to her? Yeah. Agnes, great storyteller. So I've been visiting her once a week, the Duke in her home, and I record her, and then I come home and I put it into my Word 365, and it spits it out as a document, and then I just start editing it. And so that's what I'm doing right now with Agnes. I'm doing this book with Audible Canada. If you can just go to the Delta around her. So I write this column for a newspaper in the Yukon, and it's really static, and sometimes I'll send something in and then I'll miss a deadline and they'll say, oh, try next month. But so I write this column. I do all kinds of things to make money. So I write this column. I'm writing for my own people. I'm writing for the people I grew up with. Because Lord knows there's enough writers out there writing for the Southern audiences. So what I want to do is I just want to read to you. I know we're kind of running short on time, but so this story I'm going to read you the last 10 minutes of it. This is the story that got me longlisted for the CBC Short Story Prize and the Writers Trust of Canada shortlist. So there was this guy in Inuit, his name was Big John Jerome, and he was dying of cancer. I'm going to get that. Oh boy. It really hit me in this story. He was dying of cancer and he wanted to go see Merle Haggard before he died. Merle Haggard was coming to Edmonton, and Big John was a good friend of mine. So I wrote this story based on Big John's story. So I'm going to pick it up where when we get all this money and we're finally going to get Big John down to Edmonton, and with Luke, and we're going to go to this Merle Haggard project. So I'm just picking up as we pull into Edmonton. So we just got into Edmonton the night before. So it says the next day we bring Luke down to the pawn shop to look for a white Stetson cowboy hat. The name of the story is the white Stetson hat. Just like the one Merle Haggard used, we find one at Alberta Pawn on 97th Street. Where are you boys from? The old man asked as he take the price tag off the hat. Rabbit Skin Reserve, I tell him, way up north. What brings you down this way? You take it down cloth and wipe the brim of the hat. We're going to see Merle Haggard, I tell him proudly. He take a long look at Luke in the wheelchair and his eyes get sad. He stopped and put his head down like he's thinking of what to say. You boys go on and take the hat, he said as he handed it to us. Tell Merle I said hi. We shake his hand and thank him, then shoot out the door before he changed his mind. That night we go to Bruno's Steakhouse and order T-bone steaks and drink cold draft beer. Even though Luke's appetite is not like it used to be, it's hard for him not to eat all that good meat and chew on them fat bones. We buy a case of beer and a pack of cold cigars and sit down by the river. We crack a beer and light up a cold each and talk about how much fun we're going to have at Merle Haggard's concert. Luke is a few years older than us, and he tells us stories about being in jail and how Merle Haggard pulled him through many a lonely night. We sit there in Luke's truck and listen to 3 8-track tapes. Luke sing along to every song. Old Steamboat, who owns Steamboat's General Store, got a few old suits that he lent out for court, funerals, and weddings. Before we left, he lent us one that he must have got from Porter Wagner's rummage sale, because it's got rhinestones on the collar, on the breast pocket, and on the cuffs. Pretty damn snazzy, say Rufus Tallow, as Luke looked at himself in the mirror. Yeah, not bad, eh? He say, I just need Dolly Parton on my lap now. Even Steamboat, who can barely understand English, have a good laugh. Put that coat down over a white shirt we borrowed from Levi Thunder, who's the Pentecostal preacher on our reserve, except on Saturday nights when he gets drunk by himself. He even gave Luke a bolo tie that got a cross on it. I bring a wheelchair in from the back of the truck. No need for that, Luke say. I got enough tank, and I got enough gas in the tank for another night, and he grabbed his crotch and laughed. Luke pulled a Mickey of whiskey out from his cowboy boot and take a good snort, then stick it back in like he's holstering a pistol. He snapped his arms out so the white shirt showed about half an inch past his cuffs, and he looked really smart with his new cowboy hat, and it's hard to tell he's sick. We sit close enough to the front for Merle Haggard to hear Luke yell out, "Sing me back home," which he's singing dedicated to the man in the white Stetson hat. Luke stands during the whole song and sing along like he's on death row and only Merle Haggard can save him. Chubby been taking pictures the whole time with the Polaroid camera Ida Scowl lent us, and he got everybody in our row holding them till they develop. When the concert is over, we wait till everybody clear out so we don't have to get trampled in the big rush with a white cowboy hat and his eyes is hidden beneath it. "That's a mighty fine looking hat, my friend," the guy say. "You feel like making a trade?" It's kind of a strange request, and we don't have our arms draped over one another like we know each other our whole lives. Luke shake Merle's hand and tell him how his music keep him from hanging himself in jail in 1977. Merle bow his head for a moment and tell Luke you know the feeling. He wishes all the best, then drive off. When we get back to the hotel, Luke let us try on the white Stetson hat. We pretend to be singing to 50,000 people. That night, Luke sleep with the hat under his bed. When we get back to Rabbit Skin Reserve, Luke is bedridden under doctor's orders, and we all visit him, some figure for the last time. The next weekend is the Rabbit Skin River Spring Jamboree, and everybody is packed into the Native Hall for the yearly talent show. Even though there's a lot of good singers, it don't feel right without Luke singing Merle Haggard songs. The MC announced to see who it is, but we can't make them out on account of the light truck shining behind them. It looked like somebody cradling a little kid in his arms. Then they walk in. Butchie Magnuson is carrying Luke, who's wearing Merle Haggard's white Stetson hat and pajamas. He's got a Mickey of whiskey in one hand and a guitar in the other. Everybody watching in silence as he passed by. Butchie plopped Luke down on the chair and saying to the mic, "We got one entry. Everybody okay with that?" Nobody say anything. We're all kind of in shock to see Luke up there half dead and the other half drunk and wanting to sing. I hope for a few seconds they croak out the first line of Merle Haggard's "Sing Me Back Home." Howie McGinty, who ran the soundboard, turned the mic so Luke's raspy half-whisper filled the whole room. First, just a few people clapped, then more joined in. Then it became a thunderous applause as everybody stand on their feet and give Luke Jackson, the greatest Merle Haggard singer to ever come out of Rabbit Skin Reserve, all the love you need to make it to the end of the song. We're so loud that we can't even hear Luke singing. Everybody is half crying and half laughing as Luke belt out for the last time in his life his favorite song. We bury Luke with his hat and that same suit we used on the night of the concert. Chubby put a picture of us with Merle Haggard in Luke's hand. Even though Slav lent us a truck to bring Luke's casket to the graveyard, we decide we're going to take turns carrying him there ourselves. Even Ida Scow, who will have to lift her arm really high on account of how short she is. As we're walking, someone starts singing "Sing Me Back Home." Even though I never cried since grade 6, tears start to roll down my cheeks.
Very well done.
Yeah, thank you. I love writing those stories. I just get lost in them. And I write about really difficult things too, and I write about funny things. Like, you always hear about really funny stories from people back home. These guys in Inuit, I don't know if you were there when this guy, he was in a foster home, raised in a foster home in Edmonton, and then he went back to Inuit when he aged out at 18. He went back to Inuit, and when he was about 26 or 27, he got a call from an executor. His foster uncle left him a hearse. So they hitchhiked all the way back down to Edmonton and came all the way back, and they were carving soapstone and selling little bears and stealing gas, and they finally made it back to Inuit, and they went to the town office and tried to get a license to be undertakers. and the town office just laughed at them, so they started hauling stuff around. They started using they took the back door off and they started hauling a cordwood around for people to have wood sticking out the back, and just a bunch of stories like that. So I write like that, but I also write about this. I wrote this beautiful story and I love it. It's about these two women who were sexually abused in a residential school, and they grew up to be town drunks, and they grew up to be town drunk, just mean, just really mean. They called them, one of her name was Lucy Thunder and Ida Lightning, and they called them Thunder and Lightning. And when they saw them coming, everybody was saying, "It's like thunder and lightning, the way I love you is like, fuck you." and so I had all these really rich characters, man. And so I wrote the story about them. This is, it happened to somebody somewhere, but in my mind, it happened. And so they get a call from the RCMP that women in Manitoba are putting a class action suit against this